Hello, and welcome to our weekly Friday Live Extra, produced in conjunction with Friday Live, which broadcasts over the air and comes to you as a podcast each week. Don't forget to check out even more about Nebraska Arts and Humanities on our website, nebraskapublicmedia.org/Friday Live.
Hello, I'm Associate Producer Arthur Jones. On our Friday Live Extra this week, we're talking classical music with featured soloist for the upcoming Hastings Symphony Concert. But first, things are harpening at the Unitarian Church of Lincoln, where Katie Y. Chullis, principal harpist of the Lincoln Symphony, and harp teacher Elise Nelson joined the Nebraska Chamber Players for Two Harps and Friends. Performances are Friday, February 20th at 7:30 p.m. and Sunday, February 22nd at 3 p.m. I've got Artistic Director Joyce Besh and NCP flautist Lindsay Bartlett here to tell us more. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Arthur.
How does it work logistically having both harps? Just for someone who might not know, for dual harp repertoire, both geographically as well as, we'll say, musically.
That's a very good question. Both harpists live in Omaha. And so I asked Katie to begin with. I said, can you just arrange your two harp rehearsals this week so I don't have to? And so they have been rehearsing in Omaha, and they will come on Thursday night, and we will see how it works logistically. Just last night we were looking at the space, and she said, I think if I sit here and Elise sits here and you three are up there, this will work. So on Thursday, I will find out before the concert, and you can come see on Friday how we worked out the geography of two harps in one space.
That's right. There is we have to avoid moving it around too much. And I'd say rehearsals in general, not just because the musicians live in Omaha, but also because the instruments are a little bit more obnoxious to move around than my flute, right, which is almost like a pencil case.
Yep.
So we really adapt to her in this case. So we actually had a rehearsal last week already where we met at the School of Music on campus at UNL to rehearse in the harp studio so that way she didn't have to move an instrument around. There's an instrument already there, right?
Yeah.
Because unlike places with piano where you can find a piano in a lot of places, maybe it's not the best. A harp doesn't just show up in churches all the time, right? She's having to lug that around. So we try to watch out for that too.
You've got the Lior Novak Quartet for flute, bassoon, clarinet, and harp, as you've mentioned. What role do each of your instruments play in this piece?
Well, we should also mention that there's piccolo on that piece. So the last movement also has piccolo, which is very exciting.
Of course.
So I get to play really, really high and try to blend.
Yeah.
I would say from where I am sitting as the bassoonist, Katie, our harpist, is laying down this really nice harmonic foundation and playing lovely harp things. And then the clarinet and the bassoon and the flute are often just coming through melodically and passing a line around there. I know there are several times when I play something and Ed, the clarinetist, picks it up, and then Lindsay picks it up, and then there are times when we all play together on the harmony while Katie is, strumming away and doing glissandos and chords. And so we're passing the melodies quite a bit, but we're also trading the harmonies kind of equally. It's a pretty
Very
democratic
equal
piece. I feel like
Yeah.
it's not. Sometimes I'll have a piece and I'm playing a very bassoon part, but I have extremely high melodies. I've got extremely low harmonies. Like it's a pretty egalitarian.
Yeah, you have some fun
piece.
cadenzas too. And
And I didn't choose this piece on purpose. Katie chose it, but there's a bassoon cadenza between pretty much every movement. So,
yeah.
So you get to have a lot of fun.
yes, there is some little, an odd transition where the bassoon plays for a while and then everyone comes back in on the next movement.
Yeah.
So,
And Lindsay gets to play flute and
And piccolo, yeah, which as a flutist, it's very common, right? So I always appreciate when something's programmed that has piccolo, actually, because it does really force me to keep my chops up on piccolo. It's not exactly the same.
Well, and I think you had to develop some new chops for this
That's
piece,
right.
didn't you?
I did. Yeah, there's a note that I have never played. I had never played this note on piccolo before, let alone in public. So that's very exciting for those listening that are familiar. It's the D, not above the staff, but 2 Ds above the staff. But then it's on piccolo, so it's actually an octave above that. So I don't even know. I can't count that high, actually. So I don't know how many octaves above middle C that is.
A note in the stratosphere
It
is
is
what I'm
very
hearing.
much in the stratosphere.
It is.
Fortunately, I don't have to hold it. I just kind of have to shoot it out real quick.
Yeah. Rocket it up into
Yeah.
the stratosphere. So other than that quartet, there are a lot of other different pieces.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of story are you telling with the repertoire you've chosen for this concert?
Well, I would say the first half of the concert ended up being very French. Tournier harp duo. Tournier was a French composer who wrote a lot of harp music, and we had picked everything else first. That was the last piece that got chosen for the concert. And I was talking to Katie. I said, we need another 2-harp piece. She had already chosen a piece for 2 harps. And I said, we need something else. And as she looked, she said, well, everything's French. I'll choose that, even though the Navak is not French. But after that, we sing the Debussy Starry Night with Adrian Dixon coming in as our soprano, very French. And then Defia is Spanish, but sort of French adjacent. Like, there's a lot of references, and he spent time in Paris too. So that was sort of how we ended up choosing the music. And then the Stella song, her piece is called Paris 1987. So we have a little, we can say that one has
like an
some
homage.
French,
Yeah.
yes, some
Homage
French
to French
influence,
culture,
even
yeah.
though she is an American composer. So.
Yeah. So when it comes to chamber music and sort of the various forms that can take, how is, adding 2 harps to that, and how does that allow for unique collaboration, like instrumentation-wise, repertoire-wise?
That's a great question.
It is. Well, for me as the bassoonist, even thinking about 2 harps would not have occurred to me. That came from Katie, and she said, I want to play this Defia arrangement for 2 harps and soprano. And that was where it started. That was the seed. And so then I said, okay, we'll come up with something else with 2 harps. and then she had also found the Navak. So for me, conceptually, it was difficult to wrap my head around what music is even available for 2 harps. So I really pushed that off to Katie. But I think it's going to be great fun. And
Yeah.
just even visually for the audience. And at the Unitarian Church, they get a nice close-up audience experience so they can watch just kind of the magic of 2 harps playing together.
Yeah, and I'd say all of the programs that Nebraska Chamber Players that we're able to offer just really highlight that chamber music is so unique. Every performance is so different, right? There's no parameters around what instruments or what music is really a part of chamber music, right? The Chiara Quartet that was previously in residence here in Lincoln, they would say, right, chamber music in any chamber, right? You can show up and really be in any space, and it can really adapt to where you are, and it's so accessible, I think. And we just really try to create a kind of inclusive and accessible experience. So, the programs aren't very long, and they're not we're not, even though we're professional musicians, classically trained, and we're playing really high quality music, it's not like a hoity-toity, if you've never been before, you're going to feel uncomfortable.
Not at all. Our audience is very comfortable, even kind of shouting out at us before we start to play something.
We also joke because of the nature of the space. We take an intermission, and probably the only concert in town where we always say the musicians were kind of waiting for the audience to return for the second half because they're just having a party and intermission, having a good time, and we're on stage waiting for them to come back so we can play the rest of the show. So it's a really fun time, and we definitely really encourage everyone to come out and listen or watch the live stream if you're not accessible to coming into Lincoln.
There's always good food.
And there's always great food. My kids call it the concert with the good snacks.
Well, take note of that, listener. Lindsay Bartlett and Joyce Besh from the Nebraska Chamber Players. They'll be joining harpist Katie Wychulis and Elise Nelson for 2 harps and friends at the Unitarian Church in Lincoln, Friday, February 20th at 7:30 p.m. and Sunday, February 22nd at 3 p.m. Lindsay and Joyce, thanks so much for coming in today.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thanks for having us.
More of our Friday Live Extra in a moment. This podcast and all the things Nebraska Public Media brings you are here thanks to support from listeners who become members. To learn more, head to nebraskapublicmedia.org.
Up next on the Friday Live Extra. This weekend, a dream becomes reality for a young pianist. The Hastings Symphony's From New Worlds concert features young artist competition winner Elliot Mashka performing Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue on Sunday, February 22nd at 3 p.m. at the Masonic Center Auditorium. The program also includes Saint-Saëns' Danse Macabre and Dvorak's iconic New World Symphony. We'll be speaking to conductor Tyler White during this week's Friday Live, but now I have the opportunity to speak with Elliot himself. Welcome, Elliot. How are you doing?
Good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
You've been playing piano since you were 5. What's it like to be able to play with a professional orchestra going from young to now?
Well, first off, I could have never imagined that I would be in this position. If you would have told 5-year-old me that I would be playing with a symphony orchestra, I would have said no way. So this is quite the dream, and I actually haven't gotten the chance to play with them yet. I have gotten the chance to hear them, but we'll have our first rehearsal together tonight. So I'm looking forward to that, but I can only imagine it's going to be such an awesome experience.
I absolutely believe it. What was your reaction when you found out? I guess how long ago did you find out that you'd been the winner?
So about a month ago, we had the competition, and I found out the same day. My reaction was just, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I called my parents immediately. I'd been trying to work out what I was going to say to them when I called them, and all I said was book a hotel room. And that was enough for them to know that I had won.
That's actually a good segue to my next question. So you're originally from Colorado. What brought you out to Hastings?
Yeah, so funny story. I actually was not intending to pursue music here at Hastings. My original goal was to play baseball here, which I did for a fall. So I found out about Hastings through my high school baseball coach. And that once I got here, I was like, I have to pick a major. I like music. Sure, I'll do that. And it from there, it kind of just blossomed into just a greater love for music. And now I'm doing music full time. I don't play baseball anymore. And music is definitely the focus now.
Wow. Multi-talented. Gets recruited for baseball and then just 180s and it's like, you know what, I'm going to play piano instead and play with symphonies.
I guess so, yeah.
So the piece, Rhapsody in Blue, it's a very iconic piece. What draws you to it, or what drew you to it?
Well, I can't remember the first time I heard it, but I do believe it was on Disney's Fantasia. We had watched that as kids, and the first time I heard it's kind of unexplainable, just what the feelings that it draws you in with, and the music. It's just so unique, and there's so many different interesting ideas throughout the piece, and that's what I love about it, is that it's not one idea, one thing. It's certainly more than that, and that's kind of what draws me to it.
Yeah, it's setting up a scene. I like that description. Like when I think of it, I somehow visualize the music very much as well as kind of get the tune in my head. You're a multi-instrumentalist, though. You play the tenor sax in the Hastings band. Is there any cross-contamination between phrasing and how you come to, this might be an odd question, but kind of how you approach the piano, or vice versa?
That's not something I've thought about. I would say no. I think they're definitely their own unique instruments, and playing tenor sax, it's definitely different. But in terms of just like that kind of internal musical, it's kind of the same. I hear the phrase and being able to shape it. It's kind of that carries over into playing either instrument.
When did you start playing the tenor sax? You mentioned piano was when you were 5. Were you just a really musical kid?
I did not start tenor sax until 7th grade. So in middle school when I started, I was like, I've always wanted to play sax, and we had 2 piano players in our jazz band, so I needed to find a different instrument. I was like, saxophone it is.
You'll fill in where there needs to be. So once you're done with college, what's next? Are you going to try to play piano professionally in that way and make a career out of that or something else?
Yeah, so I do plan on going back to Colorado. That's the hope right now. My plan is actually to apply to seminary, Denver Seminary back in Colorado. So no direct ties to music and piano in that aspect, but I mean, piano is something I'm pursuing as a passion, and it always has been. And music, there's no real degree that I need to be in seminary. There's no specifics. So music was kind of just it's my passion. It's something that I love doing. Might as well go to school for it.
Yeah, and I could see bringing in like musical abilities to a seminary. I have to imagine you having musical skills would be great.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, every church needs a worship band. So that's definitely a possibility. I've experimented with that. I've played in a couple bands here locally, and I've experimented with worship music, and I would say it's not the hardest thing in the world. So it's definitely an easy thing to get into and something to keep doing and on the side of going to school and getting that master's degree.
And I mean, the hopes is that I have to figure if you're bringing that high caliber of music to the services you're putting on, the parishioners are lucky.
I would hope so. I would think I would feel lucky.
The Young Artist Competition has been a cornerstone of the Hastings Symphony since 1959, giving emerging musicians the rare chance to perform with a professional orchestra. We got to speak to this year's winner, Elliot Moshka. Thank you so much, Elliot.
Thank you.
Hear him perform Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue as part of From New Worlds Sunday, February 22nd at 3 p.m. at the Masonic Center Auditorium in Hastings. We also spoke to conductor Tyler White as part of this week's regular Friday Live episode, and you can find that on the Friday Live page at nebraskapublicmedia.org.
You've been listening to the Friday Live Extra. Don't forget to check out a full Friday Live show, too, by subscribing to the Friday Live podcast. Listen online at nebraskapublicmedia.org/Friday Live, or tune in at 10 a.m. Central every Friday for the broadcast on Nebraska Public Media.